Welcome to Power Rankings, presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer. Still going.
Still going.
And a happy postseason, everybody. It is the wildest of wildcard weekends ahead. We will power rank the heck out of how it's all going to play out. He is the old Zeuser, the brains behind our Power Rankings table. And you know what? We're lucky he's here, as with the bump in pay for Peloton professors, we almost lost him to that pedal grind. But thankfully, he is still here to help us walk through Power Rankings all the way through this Super Bowl in about a month. And Dan, we get started with your 1 through 8, as these are the top teams on the table. Chiefs, Bills, Packers are your 1, 2, and 3. And as we see the Chiefs and the Packers there atop, they will have a bye in the wild card weekend. So, Dan, what do you say we start with the Bills, as they've got to host a wild card game, only one bye this season in the postseason, and that means they will face the Colts. Your thoughts?
I feel very good about the Bills, also about that Peloton grind, but I had loyalty to this game, so I would not miss it money. You know, the Bills, where they are right now, no one is playing better than the Buffalo Bills. So you look at this week one, this round one matchup, and you think, okay, they should take care of business as much as you respect the Colts. But at the same time, you try to think about, all right, let's not be overly confident. What could go wrong? The only thing I could think of.
Gotcha.
The only thing that I could think of is last year's playoffs, okay, when Josh Allen in the second half against the Texans had that meltdown. And I'm not saying that's a reason to think that the Bills can lose or that Josh Allen's going to melt down again, but it's more like, look how much has changed in a year. But that is the last time we saw Buffalo in the playoffs with sad Josh Allen on the sideline. That would be my only concern, that you somehow get a repeat of that. I don't think it happens.
Look, and I'm glad you brought it up, Dan, because we put it on Lamar Jackson, right? Hey, great regular season. Way to go. Love the MVP, but do it in the postseason. I think Josh Allen's earned that. It was a meltdown against the Texans last year, and he's going to have to overcome that. Here's my concern about that game. What do we always hear? The trenches. Come playoff time, defense wins championship. You better win in the trenches. Okay, who's the best player with the Colts offense versus the Bills defense in the trenches? Quentin Nelson and that offensive line. And we've now watched Jonathan Taylor rip off 200-plus yards in a couple of games. You see these numbers, 123.5 rush yards since week 11. They're not asking Phillip Rivers to do a lot. If he's only throwing 20 passes and he's able to rip off at 5-6 yards per carry, that could spell trouble on that side of the ball. And then you go the other side. Who's the best player when it comes to the Colts defensive line versus the Bills offensive line? It's DeForest Buckner. So I don't think this game is getting nearly enough attention for at least individual matchups and problems that the Colts present against the Bills.
Yes, and Jonathan Taylor has been a different player in the second half, and you look at the Bills' run defense, they're kind of a middle-of-the-pack team. But this is also a defense that has been much better in the past 6 weeks or so. So you have to look at the most recent footage of the Bills, and it tells us that this team, everything is telling us, despite what you say about the Colts and that it's a good matchup, that the Bills will romp because they are a superpower that's cresting. I just can't get away from that. Even though we are making the case the other way, I still think Bills romp.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect word, too, is cresting. Playing their best football as the postseason begins. And that Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs connection just seems, unstoppable. It looks like it is darn near unstoppable. All right, let's go to the Saints and your number 4 team and your thoughts about them as a legitimate Super Bowl contender representing the NFC.
Well, this is it. This feels like the Saints have had a window for these last 5 years or so with Drew Brees and a loaded defense and great skill players on offense. And it could be the end of the road if they don't get it done this year. Drew Brees potentially headed toward retirement. The salary cap the way it is, it's going to be very hard for New Orleans to bring back the same core. So the sense of urgency has to be through the Superdome roof right now. And then you look at the way they closed the season. I thought it was great to see Drew Brees, had 3 touchdowns in week 17, knocking off that rust, looking more like himself. Michael Thomas is going to be back at wide receiver, and you hope Alvin Kamara comes back. You put it all together, I don't think they're going to get knocked off in the wild card like we saw last year.
Well, look, I'm sorry, but, if we're going to do it to Josh Allen, we're going to do it to Lamar Jackson, I'm doing it to the Saints. They lose playoff games, and they lose playoff games and close playoff games because they allow these teams to keep it close. The Vikings had no business being in that game last year. Yeah, they lost in a miracle play, but that's because Brees was bad, because Taysom Hill was their leading rusher, because there was a combined 10 sacks in quarterback hits on Brees. In 2018, they're down to a 9-7 Eagles team at half. And the Eagles are what? Driving to win the game in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left. They were up 3 with 100 seconds to go against the Rams in 2018. And what did they do? They allowed them to drive the field and get a game-tying field goal.
Oh,
This team
come on,
has
Money. That's not fair. Saints fans are going to come for you on that. They got screwed out of a Super Bowl appearance by the officials in that game. And the Minneapolis Miracle before that.
No.
This is not
Minneapolis Miracle. It's a Vikings team that had no business being in the game against the 13-3 Saints in the Superdome. That's my problem, is this team disappoints in the playoffs because they don't perform. You know, Brees throws interceptions. What did they rush for against the Rams? 2 yards per carry? You're talking about Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill was their leading rusher in that game last year. Let's see it. I want to see it against a darn good Bears front that took them to overtime this year.
Right. I push back. I think there's been some bad luck in January, and it's going to turn. We'll see. One of us is right. It will be me.
Exactly. One of us will be right. The Ravens, your thoughts on this is the team that supposedly has the most of all the postseason demons, getting knocked out in the first round each of the last 2 seasons. How do you feel about it going into this year?
Yeah, you don't hear that as much this year. It's all anybody was talking about last season when they were 14-2, and then they get picked off by the Titans. Entering this season, it was all about, the Baltimore Ravens could be the best team in football, but it won't matter until you get to January. And then what happens? They start this season 6-5 and then go on this 5-game winning streak to end it. And you know what? I think that was the best thing that could have happened to them because you don't hear that talk as much about what's Lamar going to do in January. And beyond that, when you're 14-2 last year, you're in their number 1 seed, there's a target on your back, and there's pressure that comes with that. I just think they're in a different place as the 5 seed, where they're playing just as well as they were at the end of last season, but they don't have that pressure of, okay, we have to win. We're the team that should be going to the Super Bowl. I think it all sets up well for the Ravens to play extremely at a high level this weekend.
Yeah, we're both, we're both singing the same song here. And to me, it comes down to coaching. Greg Roman has got to stick with what they do, and that's what you've seen these last couple weeks. Now, granted, they haven't been playing the highest level of competition and getting all these wins and running for 400 yards against the Bengals. But they're doing what they're supposed to do, and that's run the ball. When you have Lamar Jackson and you have J.K. Dobbins the way he's been running, you can score. You don't need 8-minute drives just because you're running the ball to score. I mean, they're ripping off 20, 30-yard runs. Just stick with that. Instead, they abandoned it too early in each of these last 2 seasons against the Chargers. 2 years ago, again, I saw it with my own 2 eyes. I was like, thank you, Marty, for abandoning the run here in the middle of the second quarter because you fell behind by 10. They can't do that. As long as they stick to doing what they do best, they can punch teams in the mouth and do it on the ground. Let's wrap it up quickly with the Steelers. Tough to figure out what the takeaway, unless you do have a takeaway from week 17.
I do. And it goes back to Pittsburgh opening up its offense, which was overdue, both in week 16 in that comeback against the Colts. And then even with Mason Rudolph behind center in week 17 against the Browns, their ability to attack downfield changes the way opposing defenses have to play the Steelers. They can't sit underneath on that short stuff if you have big plays downfield. I don't know what took so long for them to snap out of that, understand they needed balance there, but it's here now, and you expect to see it against the Browns secondary that is not very good in the playoffs. And my prediction, Money, for breakout star of Wild Card Weekend, Chase Claypool, I got a feeling he's going to rip off a couple of those bomb catches.
Okay. Concur 100%. I think my one issue with the Steelers is everybody's so focused on the offense, and I get it, just because of all the drops that they had, the checkdowns that Ben Roethlisberger, and then you have this explosive second half against the Colts. I would simply say this: they have T.J. Watt. He's a game wrecker. He is arguably the most dominant defensive force in the playoffs in 2021. And when you have that, especially against a team like the Browns in the wild card round, it can change everything. One single player on that side of the ball, and that's the one thing that they wield when they go into the postseason. All right, it is so rare we get chalk from the wild card round. There is almost always an upset. So, which I can't believe what I just witnessed, will we be watching this weekend? Welcome back to Power Rankings, presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer. Sure, the wild card round is upon us, but that doesn't mean the old Zeuser didn't put together a full 1 through 32 following the final regular season contest. On the slate, here you go, 9 through 16. Chargers managed to pop up 2 spots there, even though they're out of the playoffs. Same goes for the Dolphins. They're at number 13, even though they're out of the postseason, yet finish in the top 14 slots. That's because the Bears are there at 15, and they made it in at 8-8. And, of course, we know the NFC East winner made it in at 7-9. So before we get to that 7-9 NFC champion, let's focus on those Titans. Talked about the Ravens. That'll be the wild card matchup. Might be the best game of the first round. I think most people would suggest that. So your thoughts on the Titans going into that rematch from last year's divisional round against the Ravens?
Yeah, if the Titans advance to the divisional round, it will be because they won 40-37 in overtime. They're going to need to score points, which we know they can because this is such a strange team, the Titans. They have a 2,000-yard rusher in Derrick Henry, a 40-touchdown quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, 2 wide receivers in A.J. Brown and Corey Davis that had at 1,000 yards or fewer. And yet, no one's talking about them as a serious Super Bowl contender because the defense is by far the worst of the remaining playoff teams. And I find it hard to believe, Money, that this defense is not going to get Tennessee picked off, whether it's this weekend or the one after if they were to advance.
Fair point. You got to have at least some semblance. You have to have at least a league average defense in this offensive era of football in order to make a deep run. And for whatever reason, it's just not been there. Now, the one thing that kind of works in their favor is what's their number, what's the Achilles heel of that defense? They don't have a pass rusher. Well, they're probably just going to run the heck out of the ball if you're the Ravens, right? So that's where maybe it balances out. To me, this is a coaching matchup, and we already saw it. It's Mike Vrabel versus John Harbaugh. Go coach your team. Go coach your team. It's going to be Arthur Smith versus Wink Martindale, right? One of the best play callers on each side of the ball. Arthur Smith outgained him by 120 yards last year, or in the regular season game, I should say, the last time they met, which was this regular season. I love the physicality that Smith coaches with. I love the dual threat offense. You already mentioned the 2,000-yard rusher, 40 touchdowns with Tannehill, who can do it with his legs as well. And I think that's what this is going to come down to. You said probably high-scoring game, heavyweight fight, trading haymakers throughout the whole contest. And I won't be you can't be surprised who comes out of this one because they're both worthy of making a deep run. They both have their issues. The Ravens unable to come from behind, perhaps. The Titans unable to stop anyone. This is going to be appointment-based viewing. If you can only watch one game this weekend, for me, this would be the one.
Totally with you. And if you have a young one in the home that you want to introduce to football, and you're like, it'd be good if there's going to be fireworks that they could, see a bunch of scoring. This is it. This is one of the better wild card games I can recall in a few years.
So let's get to an upset. And we discussed maybe, just to pull back the curtain in our pre-production meeting, we're like, maybe Bears, Saints. We already went through that. You and I are on different ends of that spectrum about the Saints and their performance in playoffs past and how that projects to the present. But let's go Washington. This seemed to be one that we were all, not just the two of us, but everybody involved with Power Rankings here. This seemed to be the most interesting one because of the particular matchup that is presented with the Washington football team.
Yes, because you see the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady, the way they ended the season, they are absolutely going off on offense. But you also look at the Bucs on offense and you say, well, they're kind of like a Ferrari. When everything is good and no red lights are on, it's a beautiful thing to watch. But when something goes wrong, when you put unleaded fuel in the tank, all of a sudden it could look very choppy. And Money, I think we've both noticed this all season. Washington is set up very well in terms of how they attack teams to get in Brady's face and cause trouble.
Well, because you have game wreckers all over that defensive line, right? Are you going to double Chase Young? All right, well, Montez Sweat is now has a single man on him. If you go inside, you've got Allen, you've got Payne. This is a team that not only has 47 sacks, but they got 14 forced fumbles. Tom Brady is so deft in the pocket at moving those, 1.5 to 2 feet at a time in order to create space. Has not been able to do that this year. He's got a couple pick sixes. We know those 2 games against the Saints were absolute disasters. I was on the call for the Chargers game when he threw the pick 6 to Michael Davis because Joey Bosa was giving him a heck of a ton of issues from the end position. They just had no answer for him. And here with Aaron Donald, even though there wasn't a lot of production in the stat sheet, there's the pick 6 for Michael Davis, it allowed Leonard Floyd to just tee off on Brady that entire game. And this is going to be the best defensive line he's faced. It's better than the Chargers defensive line. It's better than the Rams defensive line. It's better than the Saints defensive line. So it makes it interesting, that one particular matchup in this game.
Yeah, and then you have to look at the other side. Does Washington have the ability to score enough points to win this game? Certainly with Alex Smith behind center, they're better off than they were without him. But this is not good. If this even approaches a situation where Washington's D doesn't have a good day, Washington will not hang in a shootout. So I have to say, I got to say, you know what, Money? I'm going to do it. There is one upset every week. I don't think that this could be the upset. I think it happens. I could totally see dejected Tom Brady on the sideline at the end of the fourth quarter and everybody being stunned because it's a 17-14 Washington win. Lock it up. That's my upset of the week.
Whoa, lock it up, he said. Hold on, let me reach back here, get my lock, and I'm gonna. You know what? We met this last week.
I was the loyalist with the Washington football team during this NFC's madness this year. You abandoned them, so for you now to get back on the train, don't think I didn't notice you getting on the caboose and trying to work your way up.
You usurped my spot on the throne of the Washington football team when I called for their dominance. You know what the sad thing is if you really kind of dollars to donuts, if you ask me what I wanted a 6-10 team. I don't care which team it was. I wanted a 6-10 team to have one.
Blame Doug Peterson.
Yes, but ultimately, this is what we want. This is going to be records be damned. This is going to be a great, great matchup. Let's see if Tom Brady can work some magic there in those 43-year-old bones of his to overcome the best defensive line he's going to see all season. Up next, unfortunately, more bad news for the Browns. We'll get to all the obstacles they'll need to overcome to get past the Steelers next.
Every single game is the most important one. The singular focus is just so vital right now. We know we have to take care of business this week.
Chubb runs, dips his shoulder, hits to the 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Nick Chubb! Mayfield turns, he's going to throw, he's looking left sideline, caught, touchdown! It's Austin Hooper! And they give the ball to Landry, and he dives left side, touchdown! Jarvis Landry takes it in, and the Cleveland Browns have made it into the NFL playoffs for the first time in 18 long years.
As we welcome you back to Power Rankings presented by the long-lasting power of Energizer, we bring in friend of the show for a return engagement, one of the around the NFL heroes. I think of him as the poet laureate of the lot and our resident Browns booster. It is Mark Sessler, the Sess Dog. back to talk Browns. And well, Seth, I think it's best if I just give you the floor. What terrible news we discovered today about the Browns and what they're going to be without from a coaching standpoint. Joe Bitonio is also going to be out on the offensive line as they head into Wild Card Weekend.
Yeah, I get how this show works. It's let's dip the Browns in total chaos and put a camera on Sessler to react. This has happened on our podcast so many times, but this is a little extra, and I think we're used to covering football, waking up every morning, and the first thing you do is check Twitter to find out what happened to team player X. This has reached new heights for Cleveland when you're losing your head coach and probably the best game day coach the Browns have had since Bill Belichick. So it's a lot falls onto the plate of Alex Van Pelt. He is going to be their play caller. Just a little note, he grew up in Pittsburgh. He went to Pitt. He was drafted by the Steelers. That is interesting. But Mike Prefer will be head coach. I don't know. If I'm as a Browns fan, what I'm sort of thinking is maybe this takes, if you want to spin it super positive, it takes a little bit of heat off expectation. You suddenly become the team with nothing to lose, and you go out there and you roll with it. You still have Nick Chubb. The defense, it leaves a lot to be desired on your strengths, and you just crossed your finger.
Yeah, you do definitely have the nobody believes in us card now, so that's good. But at the same time, I mean, listen,
Yes.
This is absurd that this is a situation that's occurring in the week of the first playoff game in 18 years. It is a very Browns thing, but do you think maybe they could rally around it?
Yeah, I mean, I just tracked what some of the players tweeted and said. The one thing about this Browns team versus they have past Cleveland, teams that went deep into the darkness is I think that there is this sort of unwavering calm that comes from fans. They haven't lost 2 in a row, and they've had some pretty rugged losses, and they've bounced back every time the next week to play some of their best football. So, look, this is a whole different type of situation, but I think that they're going to go out there with a chip on the shoulder, and I know there's a lot of Baker Mayfield haters out there in the world, but Baker Mayfield with a chip on the shoulder is typically the best version of Baker Mayfield. I don't like Baker Mayfield with no Joe Bitonio at left guard. And Joe Bitonio, I mean, you look at him and he has been through some darkness, as much as many of the fans have. He's seen it all. So for him to be X'd out of this game because of Corona, the football gods, they are working overtime to spin drama here, my friends.
Yeah, and I think you heard it from Seth. I think I heard the word darkness about 6 or 7 times as it comes to what being a fan of the Browns feels like. There are a few interesting things surrounding this, right? One, as you mentioned there, Seth, you got a play caller who's been the best game day play caller because they've got an identity. They've got an identity with 2 big backs that can wreck a team and take over a team. I should say take over a game, Dan, with that run game. Nick Chubb is one of the best in the business and has been all season. He looked healthy last week. For me, Dan, the one issue that I'm most concerned with is I go back to week 6 and I look at that week 6 game versus the Steelers, and it was their worst game of, one of the 2 worst games of the year against an elite team. And I wonder, we talked about it a little bit earlier, right? How good TJ Watt is, what he can do, and if that brings up bad Baker again. Any concerns, Seth, about how the Browns looked in week 6, and if that's the Steelers team and the Browns team that we're going to see in this third matchup of the season?
Yeah, of course, that's the fear. I mean, you've seen it, Mark, all season with Baker Mayfield. I like this moment for Baker because for the reason you said, Mark, I think he's going to rise to the challenge. But also, if you look at his play and you look at the advanced analytics, he's a guy that struggles in the face of a heavy pass rush more than most quarterbacks. And with TJ Watt there and Tuitt, you wonder if he's going to be able to handle this moment.
I couldn't agree more. I think that the Browns don't match up well with Pittsburgh on either side of the ball. This is not playing the Tennessee Titans getting edge on Baker Mayfield. I mean, Pittsburgh wrecked him in that first meeting, and I don't think a lot's changed because you could talk about the slump that Big Ben and the offense went through. The defense, their strengths remain the same, and they found last week with all those major characters out of the mix to get Mayfield. Disturbed me, and I think that's the Jenga piece here. Baker Mayfield's staying up and being able to deliver the ball. I mean, he's had issues with fumbles too, and Pittsburgh's those. So it is a perilous matchup, and it's going to probably take Cleveland preventing mistakes. I know that sounds simple, but their defense, which has been opportunistic at times, creating some sort of problem for big. Do that passing game. Pittsburgh's passing game picks up big problems.
Great stuff, Sesh. We appreciate it. You always hear it on the ATN podcast, and you can read it on NFL.com as well. That are looking
Hang in there, Mark.
Again, a lot of bad breaking news surrounding that squad going into Wild Card Weekend. Here we go, Dan. Get a look at 17 through 24. You see, even though they are one of the top 14 teams because they won the NFC East, they are down at number 17. Any team there jump out at you real quick?
Any team jump out at me real quick? Yeah, the fact that the New England Patriots are out of the picture. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that money. The fact that it's week 17 and now we say goodbye. I feel like they're a monster and a slasher flick. They're going to show up this weekend.
So 25 through 32. I'll just go ahead and kind of start with number 26 there and the Eagles and you know what they had an opportunity to do. Granted, you know, so much conversation about that. Not going to get into that, but I think that's one of the more interesting teams, if not the most interesting team on that list when it comes to the 2021 offseason.
Yeah, and you heard Howie Roseman, the general manager, say, you know, we can't imagine not having Carson Wentz. He's like a finger on our hand. Whatever. If you could trade him, you will. But that contract is the issue, and it's going to be difficult to move him because of that.
Well, you know, I think there's a reason why Howie's saying that, because he wants a one. And I think he's going to get it. I think there are enough teams out there that feel like things were just weird in Philly, that there were a lot of differing factions pulling against one another. It got into the head of Carson Wentz. And there's enough people out there that believe in the talent, that have been around him. I mean, Indy is the obvious one, right? If this is the last hurrah for Philip, Frank Reich coached him basically to an MVP season prior to his breaking his leg and a path that would lead them to a Super Bowl championship, obviously with Nick Foles in the playoffs. So I could see Indy if you're Indy and you're picking in the mid-20s, you mean to tell me you'd rather pick a player there as opposed to getting Carson Wentz to be the quarterback for the next 5-6 years with all the talent you have on that team? I could totally see a squad being willing to surrender pretty good draft capital, and that's probably, you know, look, I'm reading tea leaves here and trying to read between what the literal words are, but it would not surprise me at all if they're able to fetch a pretty good bounty for him.
I'm with you. Again, the contract makes it a little trickier, but you're right, and that's why some people are they shrug their shoulders, or they don't get it when people say, oh, the Jets could get a second round or even a late first round for Sam Darnold. It's for that reason that there are organizations out there that are ready to win a Super Bowl if they could just get a solution at quarterback, but they win too much, so they're picking in the back of the first round. It's a shortcut to get a franchise quarterback if you scout correctly your reclamation project.
Yeah, and I know, look, he's there right now. I think they probably still got to hash out the Doug Peterson thing. I mean, it seems like those two were button heads quite a bit all season long. So that's another thing to kind of figure out is, I know they've said, yes, Doug is our coach, we believe in, but, you know, they still got to kind of, I think, work through what the quarterback situation is, how they want to draft. Can they amass more draft capital? Do they spend draft capital to maybe go out and get a coach? Anything like that? I mean, like, I think that, to me, it's the most compelling, you know, franchise in that bottom quadrant because of all the moving pieces, from front office and Howie Roseman to head coach and Doug Peterson to quarterback and Carson Wentz and that $100 million deal. When we return.
Okay.
And?
Sorry, Money.
No.
I was going to say, it could be much worse if Jalen Hurts didn't play well down the stretch. They would really feel like they were in a pickle, but he gives you some hope.
When we return, it is time to play Power Rankings Matchmaker. Which head coach would we hire where we call him the shots in each of the 6 open spots? Back on Power Rankings, presented by Energizer, 6 head coaching vacancies. Yesterday, the Chargers being the latest to join the fray when they released and parted ways with Anthony Lynn, as good a person as I've ever been around in the world of football, and certainly going to land on his feet again. Doug Marrone out with the Jaguars. Jets, of course, the first to move on from Adam Gase following the season. So, Dan, let's play matchmaker. We got 6 teams. We'll each take 3, and which name we think makes the most sense in each spot. Why don't you get started with your father's favorite team? I don't know if they're still your favorite team, the New York Jets.
I stand strong with my childhood team, the New York Jets, as hard as it is. And Christopher Johnson, the CEO of the team, came out on Monday and said, you know what, we messed up. Well, I'm paraphrasing here. We need a guy that can coach the entire team, not an offensive guru, not a defensive guru, somebody that could be a leader on the sideline. And Joe Douglas, as you see, that's Joe D, the general manager. The most optimistic thing I could say to Jets fans is that we are being told that Christopher Johnson and Jets ownership is going to let Joe Douglas pick this head coach, and hopefully that will lead to a functional relationship between coach and GM. And Wink Martindale, if I had to throw out one name, I'll throw him out because it's all about connections. Joe Douglas, former Ravens scouting director. Wink Martindale, a highly respected veteran coach that the players love. I'll throw that out there. Wink to the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I'm sure you love the Rex Ryan era. Wink kind of like one of the Ryans, just in his disposition and his energy and the way he carries it, kind of a little bit of that crazy to him as well. I mean, that would certainly be a heck of a lot of fun with him running the Jets and the New York media. I'll go to the Chargers. Full disclosure for people that don't know, I call games for the Chargers. I'm an employee of the Chargers, so this is kind of awkward. But certainly, I'm just kind of echoing, I think, what's out there. And that's that Brian Daboll is a great fit. He and Tom Telesco have a relationship. They grew up together, went to high school in Western New York. And just look at the parallel. I mean, what has Daboll done? He's taken a 54% passer up to 70% this year, north of 40-plus touchdowns total, and the number 2 seed in the AFC, and an MVP candidate. And if you look at Josh Allen, well, he and Justin Herbert are built an awful lot alike, right? I mean, Herbert goes 6'6", 235 pounds, pretty much similar to Allen, has a giant arm, and you want someone that you trust with the keys to that car. Daboll makes a lot of sense. And by the way, for people that aren't familiar, Daboll was with the Patriots for 5 of those Super Bowl runs. Daboll was with Alabama when Tua knocked off Georgia in the second half as their offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator, and won a college football playoff. So he's got that championship acumen to him as well. All right, third.
All I could think is you and Daboll on the Pacific Ocean, sitting on boards in your wetsuits as the sun sets. I love it.
Listen, hey there. I don't know what you got up in Canada, Daboll, as he is a Canadian native, Canada native. But I'll teach him. I'll take him into the waves. Let's go. Speaking of the waves, they got him out there in Jacksonville. You got to drive a little bit to get to him. But where do you think the Jags go?
Duval. Yeah, they're looking to make a big splash. Owner Shad Khan in a Zoom conference call on Monday. We've been looking for a franchise quarterback forever. Well, you're going to get that, the number 1 overall pick. You need a general manager. You're going to get that. But what I think Shad Khan really wants to do is make a huge splash at head coach, and that's why I'll connect the dots. Urban Meyer. You've heard it, the former Ohio State coach who had a tremendous career in college, now was working on the media side of things. If they cut the check, and I think they will, Urban Meyer is their coach, and then Shad Khan could come out of this offseason saying, I have a star head coach and a star young quarterback. Let's roll.
Yeah, look, he'd be my number 1 on every single list for all 6 of these teams. If he's willing to do it and he wants to get back into the mix, he is as good. If you're around him and you listen to him talk about football, the leadership qualities he has, man, that is a superstar when it comes to a head coach. And the Jags would be, like I said, any of these teams would be lucky to have him. I'll go with the Texans, and kind of word coming out of Houston is this is a Deshaun Watson. He is a big part of this coaching hire. Look, the guy that threw for more yards than anybody else, that played as exceptional at that position as anybody else. Why not pair him with someone that learned from the best? When it comes to partnering with quarterbacks, calling plays, being successful, anybody that's been around Eric Bieniemy knows how talented he is, what a joy he is to be around. I've been fortunate to call a couple games where he's been in the room. When he was at Colorado, I called the game, got to spend time with him. He's a dynamic personality, a great play caller, developer of quarterbacks, great partner like he would be with Deshaun Watson. And man, I just think sort of the almost exact opposite disposition as Bill O'Brien, you know, and a lot of times you want to see that pendulum swing. This one to me just makes so much sense that this is what the pairing would ultimately be down there in Houston.
And let me pair that analysis with a quote that you could read in the latest edition of Power Rankings. This from Deshaun Watson on what you want from the next head coach. We just need new energy. We just need discipline. We need structure. Yeah. We need a leader so we can follow that leader as players. That's what we need. Yes, it's time to go the other direction.
Let's who by the way penned that article?
The old Zeusa.
All right. One more for you. One more for each of us. The old Zeus. Oh, there you go. Put on the shades. The Lions. Where do they go?
Saleh. Robert Saleh. There's nobody that's getting more buzz in terms of the big chairs than Robert Saleh, who's coming off a big season as the defensive coordinator of the 49ers. And you connect the dots again. This is a guy who's a Michigan native. He has connections to the Lions, and he would give them something they didn't have under Matt Patricia, a guy that can really go in there and straighten things out. And most importantly, Patricia did not connect with his players. As we know, players love Bob Saleh. It just makes too much sense.
And you know what? I just love the physicality that he brings, man. You look at that dude all swole on the sideline. Maybe he can give, I don't know if he can give Mike Vrabel a run for his money if it were to be a head coach fight, you know, free-for-all Royal Rumble. But totally agree. That's another one to me that makes too much sense. All right, I got the Falcons. This is, I hate the term, but you always hear it, CEO. To me, that's what the hire needs to be here. Kind of that leader of men that, you know, oh, we're not going out and hiring a coordinator, someone that calls plays. You need a leader. And to me, that's Matt Campbell. And if Urban Meyer's number one on my list for each of these six, Matt Campbell be number two. And what he's done at Iowa State, what he did at Toledo, anybody that's ever been around him, they can't say enough good things. This is someone that will coach your entire football team. He's not an offensive play caller. He's not a defensive play caller. He is a true head coach. And as a guy who made his bones as a CEO of one of the most successful corporations in all of America and Home Depot, this is your CEO. Matt Campbell, to me, makes so much sense in that spot in Atlanta.
They need it because, you know, you have to go back to the end of the Mike Vick era and all the drama around that to find a time with as much uncertainty in the Falcons organization as it is right now. Big decisions to be made. And they also are one of the 7 teams that need to hire a general manager.
Exactly. And look, I'm not saying you're going to hire a first-time NFL head coach to be your GM as well in the case of Campbell, but I'm sure they would love to see him get some input there as well at how well he's been developing players and putting them into the NFL. When we return, we lean on math. That's right. Calculations, formulas to spit out which Super Bowl champs make the most sense when you start crunching the numbers. Cynthia Freeland joins us next. As we welcome you back to Power Rankings, it is now time for Power Moves, presented by Energizer, and we bring in our math maven a day after the birthday of Sir Isaac Newton, her hero, the creator of calculus, for a sneak peek at her Super Bowl summations, thanks to those 10,000 simulations from her Monte Carlo method. All right, Cynthia, let's get rolling. The people demand to know your top two teams that your projections suggest will win the Super Bowl.
Well, Money, you always like when I talk about the team that gets the bye has a much better opportunity to make it to the big dance. So, of course, 23.5, that's what the Chiefs have. That's their opportunity to win the Super Bowl. The interesting part when you look at this one is it's the highest, not only, in amongst both teams that have the bye, but it is about 4% higher than the next highest team, which is obviously the Packers. When you play one less game, things become far more interesting. Packers at 19.7, they're number 2. That's a pretty significant difference. Usually around this time when we're playing for the beginning of the playoffs, it's about 2% different. You can see this one's about 4% different, which is a pretty significant change between those two.
Yeah, the Packers make sense as the favorite, but the NFC feels so wide open. And on the Chiefs side of things, they're essentially going to have 2 weeks off. I don't worry about it in terms of rust. I actually think it could help them because the end of their regular season was a little underwhelming. So this is like a pure reset that this break will bring. And I think they're going to come out hot in the divisional round.
And just to echo what you were saying, Cynthia, as someone who was doing the Game Theory podcast with you, 4% is a giant number. I know for an idiot like me, the difference between my 76 gentleman's C and my 72 flirting with the D was kind of a big deal. 4%, a monster deal in your simulation, suggests the Chiefs are a prohibitive favorite according to your math. So let's get to the number 3 team and that first challenger in either the AFC or NFC.
So the Saints then come up as the number 2. Now, we were talking about this a little bit before, but when you lose your left tackle like David Bakhtiari did with the Packers, it really kind of helps the odds for everyone else. So the Saints at 18.5, they have to play a game this week, and that's only about 1% different than the Packers have. So if you can see, that's a monstrous change. Like left tackle, super important. Saints obviously getting pieces back to their puzzle with Alvin Kamara, with Michael Thomas presumably. So that really helps their opportunity to make it all the way and then win the game.
And Saints fans, they don't want to hear anything about positive percentages. They've been scarred by recent seasons. But the machine, the robot, Cynthia's lair, it all checks out to me.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that jumps out at me is, and I don't know why this is the case, but like Dan was talking about how perhaps the Bills, could be the number 1 team in his power rankings just based on how well they've been playing. And I assume their percentages have been trending up based on their play as of late. But how did they end up at number 4 instead of 3?
Oh, no, Cynthia. We know the fans in Western New York are not going to be happy about this upcoming spiel by you. Go ahead.
They didn't get a bye. They're the second highest in the AFC. My goodness, how much better can you get? You really think you're better than the Chiefs in this situation? Come on, you're playing one more game. That's really hard to overcome. It's almost exactly the same as the Saints. Saints were 18.5. The Bills are 18.2. So it's not that different. But the AFC top to bottom, there's more opportunity for upsets in this one. NFC top to bottom, in terms of who made the playoffs, not as strong. More opportunities for the top teams to win. So realistically speaking, the Bills have about the same chances as the Saints, if you think about it cross-divisionally.
I just got notified by the Niagara Falls Tourism Bureau. You have been banned, Cynthia, from ever checking out that giant waterfall.
Well, here's the good news, though, Cynthia. Guess what we can do? We can just hop the border. We'll go to the Canada side. To heck with you, Buffalo. We don't need you. We got a passport. We're international travelers. Cynthia lived in Liechtenstein, for goodness sakes, for a while.
There's no problem. Yeah, international travel right now in the world, that's fine. We'll do it. We got to see that giant waterfall.
Exactly right. For all of her findings as we make our way through the playoffs, be sure to hit up NFL.com/Freeland, FRELUND. And remember, it was Liechtenstein, wasn't it? Isn't that where you lived for a little while?
Liechtenstein.
Whatever, same difference. We appreciate it, Cynthia. Thank you. Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, it's all the same thing. Europe.
No, they're not.
All right, honest assessments, Dan. Let's get it going. Rams.
I mean, everybody's out on Jared Goff now. John Wolford's better than Jared Goff. An LA Times article this week. Can everybody calm down, including you, Money? All of a sudden, the Rams have their guy at quarterback.
I can't be right about something. I told you he was going to be
fine. You're not right.
And he'd be able to run all over the place.
Yeah, you talked yourself into that he was good. He was
Talked
okay.
myself into it. What are you talking about? I talked myself into it. He was great. Cam Akers doesn't fumble on the 2-yard line. They win that game by 15 points, and everybody's like, you know that John Walford. Now, even though right now they're like, John Walford. That defense is a force, man. That thing is nasty.
Yeah. Yep. And Jared Goff, rap sheet reported on Monday, not so optimistic about playing. So it looks like it will be Johnny Walford this weekend.
How about the Dolphins?
Oh, just
what a
brutal. And shocking because to lose 56-26 to a Bills team playing for nothing more than playoff positioning. First of all, it shows how impressive the Bills are right now. But this was a Dolphins team under Brian Flores that all season were prepared, played with poise, just a really rock-solid team, and to see it all fall apart on that stage, tough.
I just want to add, do not like the way they handled Tua. Putting him in, yanking him out. Don't like the offense they had him running. As someone who watched every one of his snaps at Alabama, they got to get that fixed, man. And I don't know if that means new person calling plays or what, but man, that was ugly. Cowboys.
They did it. They suck people in every year for decades now. You know, they light up the Eagles in Week 16, and Andy Dalton's connecting with these all-star young wide receivers. You think they roll into Week 17 against a Giants team that is in decline, and what? They lay another eggs. That's what the Dallas Cowboys do. It just never ends.
And yet they were your Super Bowl pick in the preseason.
That's not true. That is not true.
I just love I say it. I keep saying it.
They were top 10 of the power rankings Week 1, though. They did.
An airing of grievances up next like this. How are the Bucs not in the top 4? This list is trash. We're better than the Bills, and we beat the Packers. Who is this? Official John. I'm trying to think of who the Johns are on the Bucs that must have sent this, because we are better. We beat the Packers. All right, airing of grievances with the old Zeuser next. All right, time to wrap things up here on Power Rankings presented by Energizer. Constructive criticism is what we call it. 4 Shades with his 4 aces says, at Dan Hansers, you get paid to come up with these? Almost seems like you go by record, then just flip a couple here and there. Laughing crying emoji.
He's actually right on both counts. Yes, I get paid for it, and it's a great job, and that's exactly how I do this. So good job, 4 Shades.
That was quite snarky. Bernie Mac.
Rest in peace.
So your reasoning needs more than a little work, okay? You say Seahawks play soft schedule, which helps their D look good, but can't reason that playing legitimately the best defenses would slow the offense.
Okay.
I'm confused.
Right, Bernie Mac.
He's twisted my brain into a pretzel.
A little bit there. a little bit there, but I understand that. But you cannot say, as someone watching the Seahawks, that this is the same offense. It's more than just the opponent. Something has changed, and not in a good way.
Yeah, but hey, at least the defense is playing a lot better. Here we go, last one from the old ice clock. And look at that snarl on that face. Why would they put the Steelers down if they bench some of their starters? Well, they is not a they, it's a he, and it's the old Zeuser right here.
Right. I've never seen ice and clock put together before, and for some reason, I just kind of enjoy those two words put together. Good job.
Thanks for watching. Remember, we're back every week with postseason power rankings. Same
Ice clock.
spot, same time. We hope to see you.